Welcome to another edition of the OhioX Tech Tour. We are really excited to be in Dayton today. This is the fourth stop in our statewide series to examine, help highlight, and share the stories of the incredible technology and innovation that is happening in Ohio's cities. Today we're joined by four leaders from the Dayton-Miami Valley region. Really excited over the next hour to have an opportunity to hear from them firsthand. Today, I know we're joined by folks from all across Ohio, from Dayton itself, but one of the goals of this OhioX Tech Tour series is to help better connect technology and innovation and the people that make it happen in cities across the state. So we're extremely excited. As I mentioned, this is the OhioX Tech Tour, a statewide series. We have 10 cities, 10 events across 10 weeks, and this is our fourth one. Thanks to everyone who have joined us thus far on the tour. We started in Cleveland, went to Youngstown, Columbus last week, Dayton today, and we'll continue going across the state, talking with leaders and examining what's happening in the Buckeye State. Our goal is we want to learn, share, and help spread the work that is happening in places like Dayton. And so hopefully people are able to learn. People are able to understand and meet people. And for everyone that's on this series today, thank you so much. We may not know each other at the moment, but hopefully after the hour, there will be a lot of information shared. And please feel free to connect with our panelists on LinkedIn after the fact. We tag them on the OhioX social media accounts to learn more about what they are doing, their organizations are doing, and what's going on in Dayton. My name is Chris Berry. I'm the president of OhioX. We're a statewide nonprofit organization to help promote and connect and unite technology and innovation leaders. And so this OhioX Tech Tour is just one way we're doing that. We're, as I mentioned, incredibly excited. Before we start, I want to thank the Tech Tour sponsor, HMB, for their support. HMB helps mid-market companies and governments innovate and grow using cloud platforms and automation. HMB believes you don't have to have a bottomless IT budget to reach your full potential. If you want to learn more about HMB, their support is incredibly helpful in making this possible. Please visit their website at hmbnet.com. That's hmbnet.com. As we begin, I'll do a quick introduction of those that we are joined by today. Ask them to share a few words about who they are, what organizations they're with, what they're working on, and then we'll kind of dive in and start exploring what's happening in Dayton and sharing some of the work that's going on there. First up, we're joined by Melissa Cutcher, Executive Director of Technology First. Technology First is the Dayton region's IT association connecting IT professionals across the Miami Valley. Melissa, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome to Dayton. We're glad to have you here. So I am actually new to Technology First. I started with the organization back in February, and Technology First has been around since 1997. So I will have to rely quite a bit on this panel of experts when we talk about what's happening in the technology industry. But a couple of things that we're working on currently, all of our events, we host about 50 events throughout the year. All of those are virtual and can be seen on our website at technologyfirst.org. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you, Melissa. We appreciate you being here and sharing the work. Even if you are new, as you mentioned, your organization's been around for some time and doing some incredible work connecting tech professionals in the Dayton area. Next up is Don Kennedy. Don is practice lead at Smart Data. Smart Data makes great custom software at their core, from custom software development to Salesforce solutions and senior app dev staffing and more. Don, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Chris. Hello, everybody. So born and raised here in Ohio. On a personal note, husband, father, and U.S. Navy veteran. As Chris said, I work for Smart Data, lead actually our Salesforce practice. We're about a 122-person company based here in Dayton, Ohio, about 14 years old, doing custom software development, application development, recruiting, and then do a lot of consulting around the application development space. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Don, and thank you for your service. And we'll examine a little bit the importance and the role that the military plays in the Dayton region, which is one of one of Ohio's great assets, what's happening at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Next up is Elizabeth Kyle. Elizabeth is the data reporter at the Dayton Business Journal. She compiles the DBJ's weekly list and the annual Book of Lists special publication. She also contributes to daily reporting by writing stories focused on expanded list coverage, the arts industry, startups, technology, residential real estate, and more. Elizabeth, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. And I'm very excited to be here to shine a light on the latest innovations in Dayton. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Chicago and came to the region for the University of Dayton, go Flyers. And I graduated about 2 years ago, and right out of college, I joined the Dayton Business Journal, which my colleagues and I have been leading our coverage to highlight the local innovations and all of the developments going on in the local business sector. So I'm very excited to talk about it here today.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and glad you stayed in Ohio. Glad you stayed in Dayton, and so that's great. And looking forward to your perspective as a journalist and speaking to startups and technology companies and building those lists, which is an incredible amount of data, no pun intended. But thank you for being here. Last and not least is John Owen. John is the program manager at the Wright State Research Institute and the co-founder of the Dayton Tech Guide. As co-founder of Dayton Tech Guide and program manager at Wright State Institute, John gets to meet with amazing entrepreneurs and view groundbreaking technologies every day. John helped launch Dayton Startup Week, and his job is to help connect entrepreneurs and technologies to the resources they need to develop. John, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chris. So like Chris said, I work at Wright State Research Institute. I'm a program manager, and I support the entrepreneurial community in Dayton. We've actually graduated Dayton Tech Guide to a new program called Launch Dayton. And Launch Dayton really is a way for us to build an inclusive startup community. We saw with the Dayton Tech Guide brand that a lot of entrepreneurs that maybe didn't feel like they were tech didn't resonate with the brand. So in the last couple months, we've pivoted to this Launch Dayton brand, focusing kind of around 3 areas, making it an easily accessible environment, creating high caliber programming to support entrepreneurship and growth within those startup companies, and then creating a network of champions, mentors, and resource providers that can help entrepreneurs move and become successful.
Great. Well, thank you, John. We appreciate you being here and sharing the perspective of your work today. Before we start and kind of dive into our conversation, we'll be here for about the next 50 minutes. We want to wrap up for those that have maybe 1 o'clock calls or meetings to get to. So we'll wrap up right about 12:59. In the meantime, as we begin our dialogue and conversation, please feel free for the audience to jump in Q&As in the chat feature. Some of our previous events that we've held have had really fun and robust conversations going on in the chat as topics and stories are being shared. And feel free to ask questions. If you hear something that someone is sharing, one of our panelists, we would love for follow-up questions or different perspectives that maybe we haven't examined yet. So please, by all means, feel free to throw it into the chat, and we look forward to our conversation today. To kickstart, we're all virtual at the moment because of COVID-19. This series, 4 of you are on from video from the Dayton region. Probably most, if not all, working from home at this point. But in the matter of days and back in March, we very much shifted to a virtual economy and a virtual business experience. And so curious as to what it's been like in Dayton and how it's been affecting companies, organizations. Melissa, we can start with you. You work with a ton of companies, your member organizations, a ton of heads of IT and CIOs and others that were probably very much involved in that digital transformation for businesses. So curious from your perspective and what you've been experiencing. What's it been like these past few months?
Well, for us, it's been interesting, us specifically for Technology First staff. We very easily, because we're very remote, we were able to literally pick up our laptops from the office and move to a virtual environment, and our staff will continue working remote. And our events, we had to really quickly pivot to host our events virtually, and we were able to do that within about 30 days. But what we were hearing from our membership, and actually still hearing from membership, is that they are extremely busy. Slowing down a little bit now, but really having to support many of their clients or their customers to help them make sure that they could get their employees ready to work remote. So it's been an interesting environment where, you know, you're seeing many businesses in Dayton that were having to close. Sorry, I have puppies. Looking at some businesses that had to close, and then you look at the IT industry, and they were and continue to be very busy.
Don, what's it been like from your perspective and your work as a technology company that works with businesses probably across Ohio and beyond?
Yeah, it's actually been pretty interesting. So we intentionally, our business model very much brings kind of business and technologists together. So I think the first thing was going remote was not native to who we are, right? We're used to embedding with the clients, working side by side with the clients. So as much as we are in technology, the human side of being able to interact face to face was a big shift. But overall, actually, you know, for the region, businesses have done surprisingly well. I think everyone's gone through hiring freezes, and the CFO is now involved with every conversation. But a lot of investments, you know, in general, I think layoffs have been light and people have adjusted. We've seen people go that were very traditional. So we work with a lot of enterprise businesses. To your point, most of them here in Ohio, but we do work with clients coast to coast. And, you know, a lot of them were very focused around the real estate, their offices. You know, they've been building new buildings, and they were reluctant to go remote. They went remote, so we got to watch them go through the hoops of learning to go remote, laptops versus desktops, a lot of things you would think a lot of businesses maybe had already addressed. And then they quickly went back to the office, and now they're quickly going back out of the office. So, you know, it's changing week over week, but overall very positive. Business has been strong, which I think we're fortunate that we have a good diverse mix of businesses, and no one's been hit super hard yet, knock on wood.
That's great to hear. Elizabeth, curious both from what it's like working from home at a newspaper, because I know journalists are often out in the community attending events. So curious on the perspective, both from yourself as an individual, but then also for the companies and the technology organizations that you cover as part of your job, what it's been like these past few months.
Yeah, so there's definitely been a lot of changes on my end. For me personally, being a journalist is a very extroverted job, so I always enjoy meeting with people for coffee or attending big events just to learn about the latest innovations. And obviously that's been put on hold and now has been transformed into more virtual ways of connecting. So on a personal level, that's been kind of the adjustment. But in terms of our business journal, we've definitely shifted our focus to doing business in the face of coronavirus. No one hasn't really seen anything like this before, so a lot of businesses have been, to use the buzzword, pivoting during this time. So we've been sitting on the sidelines just talking to businesses to see how they've shifted their operations and stayed afloat through all of this. And actually, to speak on what Don has been saying, some of the businesses have actually been having a positive time during this. A lot have been thriving, and they've been able to get a hold on their pivots. But then also we've heard of businesses that have been hit hard and are kind of looking at different ways to move forward. And so our coverage is just kind of looking ahead to see what challenges still remain and how these companies are kind of moving forward with their outlook.
Great, thank you. John, how about yourself, both from the Institute or from Wright State, but then also the work you're doing with startups? And I know there's some incredible development downtown in Dayton for having tech hubs and physically bringing people together, which is obviously something that, you know, isn't happening now or for somewhat of the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so our team has been fully remote since beginning of March, which is tough for us because a lot of what we're doing, during the year is going and having one-on-one meetings with entrepreneurs and finding out which connections we can make for them that, will help them advance their business. We run a lot of events and programming that in person is a better way to do things. Our Early Risers Academy program, we actually had to pivot to virtual within a week of its anticipated launch back in March. we had some press on kind of that is going virtual, and we were able to get more people that actually joined the Early Risers Academy program, which is a boot camp, really 10-week boot camp that helps you go from idea to business plan. So we had people that weren't local that joined that. And then we also had people who, because of childcare situations, wouldn't have been able to attend something in person. But because they can stay at their computer at home, they were able to join that programming. So we've seen kind of both sides of it, where we would love to be in person, but this has also given us some new opportunities to reach audiences that we typically wouldn't.
And John, the good news is I eat less donuts now because I can't come face to face at Early Riser. So that's been a positive.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, and thanks for sharing what it's been like, because it's obviously been a challenge for everyone, and to hear, I think every bit. I'm a big believer that every business is a technology business, to at least some extent, and in this new environment, this new economy that we've found ourselves very unexpectedly in. I think there's been a lot of technology focused businesses that, to some of the points here, that there's opportunities to help connect people, help leverage technology and innovation to do business better, faster, even if we perhaps can't be in person together. One of the things that I enjoy, not being a Dayton resident myself, but following very as closely as I can, and reading places like the Dayton Business Journal, is news and information on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which for those that are maybe from different parts of the state, I believe it, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's one of, if not the largest single site employer in the state of Ohio. It's a massive Air Force installation in the Dayton area. Does incredible work, not just for Air Force, but research for innovation that goes into it. And it's been in the news recently because it's actually in the evaluation phase, which is a good place to be at this point, with a few other cities and regions across the country, to host the new Space Command headquarters. And there's a ton of work that is already happening that makes it a perfect fit. But maybe Elizabeth, since as a journalist, maybe if you could share a little bit from a very, from a high level of just what Wright-Patterson is, and then also this opportunity with the Space Command headquarters and what that can mean.
Yeah, so to build on what you said, yes, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is actually the largest employer in the region, staffing about 30,000 jobs locally. And as you said, the U.S. Air Force is moving forward with Ohio's nomination to host the U.S. Space Command, which is huge news, and especially for it being in the evaluation phase. And Governor DeWine actually endorsed the area along with Wright-Pat to host this. And if it's approved, it'll bring over 1,000 new jobs to the region, which not only will boost the local economy and support the growing defense sector, but also shine a very positive light nationally and even internationally on the Dayton region. And this would actually mark the nation's first new military branch in over 70 years, which is also very exciting. So not only with this news, there's just a whole lot of going on within the defense sector, and Wright-Pat is definitely leading the way.
And Melissa, curious, because as Elizabeth was sharing, it's not just an influx of potentially really great jobs that work directly for Space Command headquarters, but it's the technology companies, the consulting firms, the kind of ecosystem that builds up around it. And Dayton has a really fascinating and strong and rich history of defense and other national security type companies that are headquartered or have offices in the Dayton area. So curious, from your all's work with so many different members, what an opportunity like that would be for the surrounding technology private sector ecosystem.
Oh, it's immeasurable, right? It'll be an outstanding opportunity for businesses in the region and opportunities for entrepreneurs in the region. We're excited about it. Well, having Wright-Pat in our backyard is a huge win for our region, but then to be able to be considered is another huge win. So we hope that we'll be chosen. What I think part of our question will be is, how will we provide those 1,000 employees to Wright-Pat? when does seem to be a gap in technology needs. They're meeting what employers need in the employment gap. So do we have the skilled workforce to fill that gap? So it'll be an interesting challenge to see how we can get those employees in place.
And if I can, Chris, I mean,
Please.
just to put some context around it, and these are older numbers, so these may have changed, but just a year or two ago, it was a $16 billion impact to the economy. So physically, it's not a big base, but it is one of the most complex bases in the military. A lot of different commands are there. So the U.S. Space Force, I always laugh when I hear that, because I unfortunately watch the Netflix show, and it just makes me laugh. But yeah, it's a jewel for the state. And to Melissa's point, engineering, IT professionals, these are not manual labor jobs. There's a lot of high tech going on around the base. So we're very fortunate to have it in our region, with or without the Space Command.
Absolutely. And John, I know there's working with startups and being at Wright State, certainly a lot of overlap from the innovation and emerging tech, but also the opportunity for startups, whether they're Dayton area individuals that want to create a business, or opportunities for people that, if you want that physical proximity to where some of this stuff is happening, and you have a defense industry idea, and maybe you don't live in Ohio, what an incredible opportunity for cost of living and just runway that you're not going to get in places like Silicon Valley to try startups and build companies in Miami Valley.
Yeah, there are two things that kind of excite me about this for the startup community. If you look at the Small Business Innovation Research Grant SBIR dollars that come to the region from DoD and specifically the Air Force, the Dayton area ranks 4th for Air Force SBIR dollars across the country for a metro area. If I remember right, we're between Boston and San Diego. So we're out punching our weight there, and proximity obviously matters. So if the command does locate here, that's another opportunity and another federal branch that Dayton will have a strong, I believe, a strong showing in getting those grant dollars, which typically fund kind of the beginnings of new innovations. And then if you look at when the 711th Human Performance Wing came to Dayton, I want to say it was 2008. In the last 5 years or so, we've started seeing a lot of technologies and things spin out of that that are becoming or trying to become new commercial startups. So it may take 5 years, 10 years after a command would land here. But I think eventually you'll start to see new technologies coming out that will be creating new private businesses in the community.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, you mentioned the flying cars. I'm a little less interested in flying cars, but there's a lot of UAV drone work that has come, to John's point, from the military. So there's a lot of work in that space, whether it's educating people coming out of college, forums and business conversations, but that's a direct spinoff of that military work. We're pretty advanced in the UAV drone field.
Yeah, the flying cars, which as I was reading the headline shortly before this is, quote, right path to play key role in development of flying cars, which was written by one of Elizabeth's colleagues, John Bush, at the Dayton Business Journal. But yeah, the drones and just the innovation and research that's happening, I think it's certainly one of Ohio's best jewels and best resources that regions and cities across the country would absolutely love to have what's going on. But I know we have some people probably from UD, and Elizabeth, you mentioned you came in from out of state, but curious as to what opportunities and what's going on with collaboration between places like John Wright State, University of Dayton, and then the base itself and some of these private sector businesses. So Elizabeth, are there some examples of how these public-private kind of collaborations are happening, especially in the technology sector?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of different examples of a lot of collaboration and reinvestment in the Dayton region. Narrowing in on the startup scene, we have the Entrepreneurs Center, which has been a key player in supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses, along with Dayton Tech Guide, as John has kind of spoke on a little bit. Basically, Dayton is just a huge hub for that support where people can really launch their businesses and grow here. And then we also, kind of building on that momentum, we have a lot of large scale projects that are underway. For example, the Dayton Arcade, which is kind of known as the crown jewel of the Gem City. It's basically this big revitalization project comprised of 9 buildings within downtown Dayton. And the project will be a host of retail, event space, and office spaces. But a key piece of it is the Innovation Hub, which is a collaboration between the Entrepreneurs Center and University of Dayton, actually. So that space will not only help University of Dayton students kind of grow and build their entrepreneurial skills, but a lot of small businesses and startups will be able to call that home and build their businesses there as well. So that's just among the great things going on here in Dayton.
And John, right before COVID, you and I had the opportunity to sit down, and you were kind of showing me in downtown Dayton some of the work and some of the development and construction that was going on. So could you maybe kind of piggyback off of Elizabeth's comments about just the amount of development that's happening in downtown to help kind of amplify and connect and give opportunity to whether it's startups or technology companies or business, big co's and hospital systems, which are certainly across the region.
Yeah, and Elizabeth may have the numbers on this, and correct me if I'm saying them wrong, but the arcade space, it's about 1 million square feet. I think 150,000 of that is going to be an innovation hub. So when you're talking 150,000 square feet for startups and tech companies, that's a huge space. That's what you see in major metropolitan areas. And this building, built in 1903, kind of was the hub of commerce back then. And it's been idle for 20 years or so. And you're going to see kind of the entrepreneur community, the arts community, having a kind of strongholds in that space. And I really think it's going to bring a vibrancy to downtown community, to our business community. But more than that, it's going to be where from an entrepreneurial community, it's going to bring density. So you're going to have people that will bump into each other that are working on similar things that then join forces. You're going to be able to run into maybe an angel investor that can, or a mentor that can guide you. You'll have a lot more of these serendipitous interactions that, we're kind of plan serendipity, I guess, through having this kind of density of space.
Melissa or Don, anything to add to some of that development that's happening in downtown?
No, not really. Followed John and his team, and yeah, there's a lot going on. I've been around long enough. I've seen downtown come and go. So yeah, it's exciting to see downtown get a new breath of fresh air and some really exciting things going on, both entrepreneurial, federal, and then we do have some big co's in Dayton, Ohio, and they're thriving downtown as well.
I think too, it's a testament to the culture of our environment. So our community is all about collaboration and how do we support each other? How do we encourage and help each other grow? And collaboration is key in our region.
One question that we got in as part of this chat, so thank you to those that have submitted a few, and I'd also encourage others as we're kind of at our halfway point. Feel free to either do it in the Q&A, send me a direct message, put it in the chat. But Shauna asked about Elizabeth, experiences you had with technology at the University of Dayton, and I think that's a good kind of segue into the higher education that happens, and certainly for technology. It's talent that makes it possible, whether it's students graduating, going to school at the University of Dayton, at Wright State, and other career technical centers across the Miami Valley. But Elizabeth, maybe if you could talk a little bit about the role of universities that are in Dayton and the opportunity, not just maybe for students and a personal, as someone who recently graduated a few years ago, but then also what are some of those specialties that can be pipelines into the Miami Valley and keeping talent like yourself here in Ohio as opposed to going back to Chicago?
Mhm. Yeah, well, first off, on a personal note, the reason I came to Dayton was because of the University of Dayton. So that alone is just attracting so many different students from across the nation and internationally here to Dayton. But narrowing in on University of Dayton, I know in terms of the technology sector, they have their research institute over there that's doing a lot of great innovations. And we also have Fastlane, which has been making great strides in the manufacturing industry as well. So that plus the entrepreneurial program, and we also have a growing engineering program over at UD, that all together is kind of just giving opportunity back into the local sector. And along with Wright State Research Institute as well, they're doing a lot of great research, especially within the defense field as well. And so not only do universities shine a light on Dayton for students to kind of come on in, they're big feeders to supporting businesses around here and supporting innovation as well. So I can see that going on for many years to come.
John, as someone that works with Wright State and the Research Institute there, what are some of the focuses that go in on that side of things?
The big thing at WSRI is connecting universities to the Air Force. So we've got programs at the federal, state, and local level that are all working to grow the number of small businesses that are supporting the Air Force. Programs like APEX, which is a federal program, at the state level, the Ohio Federal Research Network, and then locally, my team. And then we also have out in the Fairborn area, Tech Warrior, which can actually allow you, they've got, it's a former cement plant where you can run different scenarios for your technology. So if you've got some kind of search and rescue technology, you could run that in a like a live action scenario and see how it responds. So you could have the firefighters there and they could say, hey, this needs to be bigger because I have to wear gloves when I am using this, or it needs to be easier to use because I'm wearing gloves. And same with the military, they run exercises with them so you can actually test the technologies with the end user. So a big focus of ours, I would say, really is getting those university talent and technologies back into the Air Force.
Yeah, I know UD is doing a lot with like cyber ranges, so they're doing a lot of education around cybersecurity, both to fulfill the federal need as well as just the general market need, like a lot of other universities. The other thing I'd add, and I love the universities, I'm a proud college grad, I think there's a big conversation, I know it's happening around the state, around non-traditional education. So, especially in software development, other trades, college is not the only path. So I think that's another important conversation that is going on across the state as well.
Melissa, curious from your perspective, working with the technology companies themselves that are then having to hire talent, whether it's from non-traditional or more traditional education paths, but curious as to what it's like from the business side as opposed to the kind of the higher ed or non-traditional educational for the companies that you work with.
Well, going back to the culture of our region about collaboration, what we're finding is that even through K through 12 and even in higher ed, they're connecting with the business industry to find out what is needed. So you'll find, an adjunct professor that owns a technology company or connecting with colleges in the area to help build the curriculum. So because of that collaboration in our region, I'm not aware that there's necessarily a gap, but they continue to stay in communication so that not only through K through 12, but also through higher education, I think that gap is, if it's there, it's small. Don might have a better.
Yeah, it's just like much of the rest of the country. I think, Chris, there's a lot of focus on STEM education and engineering, and there's a couple small local groups that have done some great work. Extreme STEM's one of them. It's backed by, I think, an ex-Business Journal guy, as well as some manufacturing. So a lot of advanced manufacturing going on, and they put on this, what they call Extreme STEM competition. It's basically a BattleBot competition, but in that they bring in a lot of engineering education, again, drones, robots, that whole workforce development from early ages up through into college. So yeah, a lot of efforts going on there to fill those gaps. And I think we're like everyone else, trying to figure out how we get more engineers and people that love math and computer science. So.
Absolutely. And in the chat, Sarah, thank you for sharing it, but she posted the link to the University of Dayton's Cybersecurity and Data Intelligence Center too, which again, as we think about things like Space Command and the Air Force and all the security and cyber that happens with that, it's interesting to see those that's where cities can really develop expertises and be hubs for some of this. So thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. A question kind of, and going back to COVID, but from Patrick in the chat was, have you heard from companies how the work from home situation has impacted productivity? Is this something that companies will consider more widely when things eventually open back up? And maybe Don, if maybe we could start with you, because you mentioned that a lot of times your business would go into your clients and your customers and be with them physically. So curious what this new world is like. And then do you think that it changes at all in the months and years going forward?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, the sales of jeans are down and the sales of sweatpants are up. So that tells you everything. Everyone does more work in sweatpants. No, seriously, I think it's actually probably been a good thing. As tragic as it is, I think it's exposed a lot of organizations, that conversation around what is productivity, what is the expectation, the whole commute to the office. So yeah, what we've seen is most organizations were there. They had some kind of work from home and they were pretty progressive, if that's the right word. The few that weren't are there now. And I think long-term, that's probably a very, very positive thing. But yeah, I think overall, and you got to keep in mind, Dayton, much like the rest of Ohio, right? Working class, blue collar, we're comfortable rolling up our sleeves and getting to work. I don't know that it matters so much whether it's in the office or not. So yeah, I haven't seen any decline at all. I think if anything, it's given us some opportunities to increase productivity. So. And
Elizabeth, or Melissa, excuse me, I saw you nodding your head in agreement with Don, but curious as to what some of your member companies are you're hearing from them, but also for technology first, because so much of it is building a strong technology ecosystem in the Miami Valley, which historically we would all get together, but opportunities for virtual programming, virtual gatherings. So curious if you have anything to share on this.
I think I agree with Don. Absolutely. I think from a management perspective, we were probably a little more concerned in the beginning that our teams were not being productive. But I would have to say they're more productive. It's a little bit easier. You're not having I'm from Troy, so 30, 45-minute drive back and forth, and you're not going from meeting to meeting and all of that travel. I think we're working harder and getting more accomplished.
Elizabeth, what are you seeing in your reporting and working with companies about what the future months and years have in store for businesses across the area?
Yeah, so right now, obviously, a lot of businesses are shifting and trying to stay afloat during this time. Kind of echoing Melissa and Don's points, a lot of these businesses are very busy and they've pivoted very well, not only virtually, but also trying to find new ways to gain more business. So for example, one of the startups I'm definitely going to keep an eye on moving forward is Tempogenics, which creates disposable thermometers called the Temp and Toss. And they've been exploding with demand since businesses are going back to work. They've just had so many orders for these disposable thermometers. And so it's those ways of finding new ways to kind of build business, I guess. And so just moving forward, I'm sure that'll be a lot of the same trend and just kind of pivoting with each challenge, because no one really knows where we're going to be within the next few months. So just kind of staying ahead of it and being creative.
And John, you work for a higher education organization, and you're also actively part of downtown and building some of that out. So curious, for some of those industries and sectors that do require in-person gatherings and that's what makes downtown so vibrant. You talked earlier about the density and bringing people together. But what is it like these months, whether at the university level or some of your work in the downtown area?
Yeah. So I mean, right now our co-working space is kind of in a temporary location. I'm hoping all of this goes away by the time that we can actually move into the arcade. Because I think that's going to be a huge turning point for the community. Personally, I've got a 7-week-old at my house, so that makes working from home a little difficult when I can hear him crying in the room next to me and trying to stay focused. And I know a lot of people have kind of similar situations like that where they've got, the kids in the room next door, and daycare is not an option for some people right now. So I think there are some things there that need figured out still in the work from home. And I know there are times where I'm waiting for him to wake up at 10 p.m. at night, and I'll just pop into my office and get a little more work done. So I think the kind of this constant working from home, the kind of boundaries have grayed even more than they were before. So I think there are some of those questions that, will need to be figured out as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just if I could add to that, so you're going to hear, and maybe you've already heard about contactless economy. So I think inside of this, getting back to work, getting back downtown, getting back to restaurants, there's a great opportunity with just contactless technologies. So between the sensors work that's going on at the base and just our background in sensors and advanced manufacturing, I think StrataCache is a great example. If you've never heard of them, proud Dayton-based company. They do a lot of digital signage at McDonald's and Walmart and all kinds of retail environments. So I see the evolution of that sensors, digital technology, not having to touch as many things, whether it's the door, the cash register, things like that Dayton will be at the forefront of. And I know Cincinnati, there's a lot of interesting conversations going on there around contactless economy.
That's really interesting. And Don, that brings up a good transition because with the physical location of Dayton and some of that expertise in technology and research and innovation in that area, I would have to think that it's a great thing to be located, Kroger or Procter & Gamble just over in Cincinnati, very short drive, and having access to, some of those stores that have in-person components like grocery stores, for instance. But a general question, and maybe we can start with you, Elizabeth, since you do a lot of reporting. But one interesting thing that we've enjoyed kind of hearing from different groups across the state as we're having conversations like this. But what is something that you wish, and we can go around to everyone, starting with Elizabeth, and maybe it's an example of a story you've written, but what is something that you wish the rest of the state knew about Dayton? We've talked about Wright-Patterson, the research that goes in there. But if we have a statewide audience today, but what's something that you think maybe it gets even reported locally, but there's more that can be done to help spread it across the state of really great technology innovation work happening in Dayton?
Yeah, so bringing it on a personal note, as I've said, I'm from Chicago, and when people ask, oh, why are you working in Dayton or what's in Dayton, I always just really stress to them that there's so much going on here. I know this whole conversation has focused in on the innovation and technology, and we have Wright Pat leading the way, but I really stress that Dayton's innovation didn't stop with the Wright brothers. I know that there's been some tough times on Dayton, especially last year with the Memorial Day tornadoes, along with the Oregon District mass shooting, and there's kind of a dimmed light on Dayton nationally and maybe even throughout the state, but I just always stress that Dayton is a hub for innovation and there's a lot of great things. For example, we have the support of the Entrepreneurs Center. There's lots of jobs hiring and these universities are drawing so many students in. I hope people can see the opportunities here and stay here. So overall, I just wish people would know that there's a lot of momentum here and I see that going forward for many years to come.
Great, thank you. John?
If you look at our ESP program, which is a state-funded program that the Entrepreneur Center manages, that my team helps support, if you look at their portfolio of companies, a large percentage, I want to say probably 20-25%, are medical technologies, which I think is something you wouldn't expect out of Dayton. And I talked a little bit earlier about the 711th Human Performance Wing. Some of that is coming, some of those technologies are coming from there. But a lot of them are doctors, physicians, nurses that have been working for 10, 20 years that eventually said, I think I can do something better. Some of them I think will be groundbreaking technologies. Elizabeth mentioned Tempogenics earlier. You know, they're doing really well. Another startup that's not medical related, but Elizabeth actually I think wrote the story on, Arcani Coil Care. Has been doing really great. Elizabeth, if you want to touch on that one real quick, I think that's a great story that's happened in our community.
Yeah, so just really quick, this is a minority-owned hair company, and basically the owner used to be homeless and was kind of down on her luck, but then she decided to pursue her own hair care company, and I believe within a year she was close to $1 million in profits. So there's so many success stories like that here, right here in Dayton, and I've just had a joy to kind of shine a light on all the opportunity here, and so that's just one example.
And she just opened a warehouse somewhere in the West Dayton, Trotwood area. That's so the manufacturing is taking place here, which is great.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that and bringing that up, John, and sharing your reporting, Elizabeth. Don?
Again, reframe the question, just kind of cool things going on.
Yeah, like what is something that you, you know, Dayton, there's something happening in Dayton, there's technology, there's innovation. What would you share with the rest of the state as we have people tuning in from all over today?
Yeah, so I'd point back to, you know, so I'm born and raised here in the state, went around the world, came back. I've got 3 kids, 2 of the 3 are out of state. Actually, one's in Chicago, Elizabeth. So, you know, start with the obvious, cost of living, great city. I love the fact that Dayton's kind of got a little bit of a chip on its shoulder because it's the 4th largest city in the state. But I think that's what makes us so powerful, right? So the concentration of IT professionals, engineering, that innovation background, there's a lot of really neat things that you will not see. We don't have some of the sizzle maybe some of the other cities do, but I think that's what makes us so interesting. So between transportation, logistics, the military stuff we've talked about, there's a lot of commercial enterprise businesses that are doing a lot of innovative work, a lot of exporting dollars. So I like, especially in the tech space, a lot of smaller companies like ours that are doing work on the coast for some of the big tech names that we've all heard of. And I don't think people would ever think about Dayton, Ohio being that kind of powerhouse, right? That people in New York, California would be calling us to help them do work, especially in the tech space. But a lot of that happens every day.
Thank you. Melissa?
I was just thinking, why not Dayton? Dayton is built on the backbone of mom and pop shops. We've been a small but mighty community for a really long time. And I think about, we may not have large, you know, enterprise businesses here. We don't typically have large headquarters here. But I can tell you, we have some really passionate Daytonians, and we have a lot to offer in this community with arts, business opportunities, healthcare, the military, a huge presence with academia. So why not? Come and check us out.
Well, that's a good segue that as we're about to wrap up and everyone on here can either grab lunch or head off to their 1 p.m. meetings. But we can do a quick round robin of, we'll just go alphabetical again. So Melissa, if we want to start with you, of how can people learn more about Technology First? What do you have coming up? Some of your programming. What should they know that we haven't discussed today? So this is everyone's shot to share one final message with everyone.
I would like to leave with, now that all of our events are virtual, there's no excuse for not joining us. Our website is technologyfirst.org, and you'll see our events are posted on there. Our CIO Council meets on August 14th. You'll see that on the website. And our Taste of IT conference, I believe this is our 17th year. I don't know, Dawn, if that's right or not. Taste of IT has been hosted. That'll be on November 18th. We will be doing that virtually as well. So come and check us out. Give me an email, send me a message. I'm happy to show you around Dayton and technology businesses, and happy to connect you with whoever.
That's great. And Melissa, before we go to Don, what is the Taste of IT for those of us that aren't familiar? And maybe it's because it's the lunch hour, but it sounds really good.
Yeah, I'll have to defer to Dawn. Dawn's on the Taste of IT committee. So.
Yeah, I could take that on. It's kind of what it sounds like, Chris. It's meant, we have two major events. One's a big security event in the spring, and then we do the Taste of IT in November, and it's meant to be wide. So we cover a lot of different technologies. Again, just give everyone a little taste. So infrastructure, software development, security. We've got an executive track this year. So much like it sounds, no food. We do have food, but it's not a food festival.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Don, if you want to, anything else you want to share, and I should have asked, one of the fun things that came out of a few of other events, and in Youngstown in specific, was there was a claim that Youngstown has the best Italian and pizza in the state. So, if maybe in addition to anything you want to share as a final parting words of wisdom, when people come into town to meet Melissa or get the tour and read the Dayton Business Journal, what should people be eating or drinking?
There's a lot. So much like other parts of the state, lots of breweries, lots of Italian, Greek festivals, lots of interesting culture in Dayton for sure. From my perspective, thank you for doing this, Chris. I've enjoyed the previous sessions, and I think for me, one selfish plug for Smart Data, right? Smartdata.net. You need software development. Got 120 really smart people that can help there. But from a state perspective in Dayton, I think the big picture for Ohio is we got to kind of remember we're all in this together too, right? So it's not Cincinnati versus Dayton versus Columbus. This is really Ohio versus other parts of the country, whether it's attracting jobs and revenue. So I'm really energized by this conversation, and Dayton's definitely a part of that team and bring a lot to diversify what the state already has. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Don. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I would encourage everyone to subscribe to the Dayton Business Journal if they haven't done so already. My colleagues and I just really want to focus on shining a light on the region. And for example, I've been leading our fastest growing companies list, which will actually be publishing this week. So there's a whole spread about some secrets to success, some challenges, kind of the outlook that some of these companies are dealing with at the moment. And just moving forward, we're just always open to shining a light on new businesses and growing businesses. So if anyone has any story ideas or wants to meet just to talk about the latest going on, feel free to add me on LinkedIn and we can go from there.
That's awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. John?
So two things. We put out a weekly newsletter that you can customize. So if you're only interested in defense industry startups, that's what you can see. If you're interested in minority startups, that's what you can see. So we use a startup actually out of Cincinnati for that newsletter. But if you want to stay up to date on events or any of the news coming out of our startup community, we can plug you in there, and I'll share that website in the chat. The other thing I want to plug is Dayton Startup Week is September 21st to 25th. It's typically the largest event in our startup community. Last year we had over 1,000 people. Obviously we're going virtual with that this year, so you can be anywhere in the state or country and join that. And even though we've gone virtual, I think our speaker lineup is the best we've had to date. We're going to launch registration and some of the previews for that schedule next week. So if you do sign up for our newsletter, you'll be able to get a first look at that. And I've also shared my email there if anyone wants to contact me about any of the programs we run at Wright State Research Institute or through the Launch Dayton Community Grant.
That's great. Thank you, John. And that's a good segue as we're about to wrap up. Please feel free to connect with everyone who's been on this today. If you go to our LinkedIn, the OhioX LinkedIn, it's just at OhioX. We've tagged the organizations and the four individuals that are on today. So feel free to shoot them a connection and chat with them about what you're working on, what they're working on. And that's one of the goals of this series that we're doing is connecting and sharing ideas, companies, and the leaders that make it happen. So thank you to everyone who's attended today. As we're wrapping up, I want to thank also HMB for their support as our sponsor. Again, their sponsorship has helped make this possible. We're doing this all across the state, 10 weeks, 10 events, 10 cities. It's a big undertaking, and we've certainly enjoyed every single one. And this has been fantastic as our fourth stop. So if you're interested in learning more about HMB, you can go to hmbnet.com. But as we sign off, next week we'll be in Cincinnati. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Hopefully you'll join more of these. You can go to ohiox.org/tech tour to look at the rest of the lineup and all the different cities we're going to be going in. Hopefully those that have been joining us, you join us for future ones. And if this is your first one, hopefully you consider checking it out, and looking very much forward to doing more of these and continuing conversations with folks and leaders and companies in the Dayton area as well. So thank you to everyone for being here. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.